Hi folks, it's Diane from Spencer Ogg Sewing Patterns, just dropping in really super briefly today just to explain about when, where, how and why we would snip into a zip tape. So a few issues on the Facebook group this week and last week with certain designs of zips and them fraying, so I just wanted to explain why they do that and what types of zips you can snip into and why you can snip into them and why you can't on some designs. So why would we need to snip a zip in the first place? Obviously we might cut it to make it shorter, but then we usually sew a tab on each end or we stitch over it with the side seam, so that kind of resolves that issue. But sometimes we might want to snip along the zip tape. Why would we want to do that? Well, it tends to be on a convex curve. So if it's a large curve, you wouldn't ever need to snip the zip. You could just manoeuvre it round. But when it's on a tight curve, like something like this is the Curvilicious, or one of the samples I did in the Curvilicious design process, it's quite a tight curve. So you probably do need to snip the zip to get it around nice and gently. I mean, you can make little folds in it, that's okay too, but I prefer to make little snips in it, and I want to show you just how, where and why you can do that. So just a bit of background on myself, so you know I'm not talking off the top of my head. I have been in textiles and garment production all my life, more years than I care to remember, let's say over 30, and I only stopped doing that when I became a pattern designer to sell my own patterns online. So in my career as textile and garment buyer and producer, I've spent many years in factories. I've also visited many zip factories, and I know the zip production process quite well. So that's where my experience comes from. So just to explain about zips in general, this is a regular general zip. So this is number 3, doesn't matter if it's number 5, number 3, they all pretty much work the same, but you'll see that they have a reinforcement line in there. I'll put some pictures up. It's easier to see from the back often. And it's usually about 6mm up from the edge. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but often is. And that is a line where the weave of the zip tape goes in the opposite direction, and it's there to strengthen the zip tape, and it's there to strengthen when the zip's been put in. It helps the zip not fray, and it's also a good indicator of where to place your stitch line in many cases. It helps us get a straight line when stitching. So that reinforcement line also means that if you snip within the outer edge of the zip tape before you get to that reinforcement line, when you pull it, it won't rip anymore, it won't pull open anymore. So try it on an old zip, give it a go, so you can see what I'm talking about. And that reinforcement line acts like ripstop, like a ripstop fabric. It's an extra line to stop anything fraying. So as long as you're snipping outside that line, you should be fine. Try it on your zip, use a little piece of spare zip, even a continuous zip, to see what it does on your particular brand. So when you are making snips, just make your snips about 1/8 of an inch or 3mm. That line is usually at about 1/4 inch or 6mm, so you want to be snipping well within that line on the zip tape. And then when you sew it, you want to be sewing on the other side of the reinforcement line, or well away from the end of the snips. On a continuous zip, you'll also see that line. It's not just on fixed length. If you don't see the line, even on some of the cheapest most economical zips, what happens on those now is they've started to weave in each direction, so that when you snip that, there's actually lots of reinforcement lines, so you don't see one necessarily. So if you've got continuous zip, just try it yourself on a little piece first. So I've snipped there, and you can really yank that and nothing is happening. So you would be able to pull out a few threads underneath, but it won't pull anymore, it won't rip anymore. So as I say, just experiment on a little swatch of your own particular zip before you put it into anything if you're going to snip it. So the reason we're seeing problems on the stripey zips and some of the designed zips is that the weave isn't the same. The weave now goes downwards rather than across, so there's no reinforcement line, so there's nothing to hold those fibres or those threads into the zip tape if you snip it, or if you trim it down, the width down, anything, it will literally fray. So do avoid using the stripy zips or any particular woven design zips in a project where you're going to have to snip the zip. So in a tightly curved project. So just a brief explanation of when, where and why we would snip a zip and which zips we can do it on. Hope you've enjoyed it. Do subscribe to the channel while you're on here and join the Facebook group to ask any questions. See you soon.